I pressed a button on my phone, and 300 feet of steel gate slid shut across the only road into Bay Ridge Marina. 200 boats, tens of millions of dollars in yachts and fishing rigs and weekend toys. All of them suddenly trapped behind a fence I paid for and welded together with my own hands. And the funny part is, the whole mess started because one HOA president decided my dead wife's memorial boat was bad for her precious aesthetic, like grief needed to be color coordinated. My name's Mike Lawson. I'm 58 retired welder born and raised on this stretch of coast, and I'm not the kind of guy who goes looking for a fight. But I grew up in a house where my dad would say, if somebody pushes you off your own porch, you don't argue on the lawn. You put them back in the street, you know what I mean? And that's kind of where this went. I live in a place called Harborview Landing. Fancy waterfront community in the brochures. Drone shots of glass balconies and sunset over Bay Ridge. Marina, all that, but my house is the leftover piece from before, all the chrome and glass. A little 2-bedroom box. My parents built when this was a working harbor. Wood siding, faded paint, a porch swing that creaks when you sit on it. Looks like it snuck into a gated community when security wasn't watching. Out back, there's a short gravel lane that leads down to the water, and that's where the real story sits. A 1991 seafarer named Emily's. Promise my wife picked that name. We bought that boat for our 20th anniversary, with money. We absolutely did not have, and for years, every Saturday before sunrise, she'd be in that captain's chair with a mug of coffee hoodie, pulled up hair in a messy bun, watching the bay go from black to silver to gold, tapping the hull and saying, "This is the only kind of therapy I'll ever need, Mike." Then cancer showed up and took every bit of that life apart, piece by piece, and when the dust settled and the casseroles stopped coming and the house got way too quiet, Emily's promise turned into the only place where I could sit and not feel like the air was trying to crush me. Her wind chime still hangs from the canopy. There's a smooth patch on the wheel where our hands wore the varnish down over 30 years, and if I sit there with my coffee just right and the tide is slow, it feels for a minute like she just went inside to grab another blanket. Harborview changed. While all that was happening, the condos got bigger, hers got more expensive. People started talking about curb appeal and brand alignment instead of neighbors and docks. Bay Ridge, Marina turned into a showroom for money. 200 slips, big sport fishers, sleek sailboats, a couple yachts. So ridiculous they have names written in gold script on the stern and tucked along the back under a buzzing old security light. My little seafarer sat there, minding its own business. Paid up clean. Quiet, bothering absolutely no one for 15 years. Then Cheryl arrived. Her full name is Cheryl Whitman, mid-40s real estate broker. Freshly elected HOA president, rolls around in a pearl white SUV with a vanity plate that literally says bis. Hair perfect. Nails perfect. Voice like every customer service call where you know you're not getting a refund. Yeah, that kind of person. The first time she came to my door, I was on the porch in sweatpants with bed hair, coffee in hand, and she parked that SUV sideways across my driveway, like she was dropping off a movie star, not blocking the only way my truck can get out. Knocks on the door without even a hello. Just bang, bang, bang. "Mr. Lawson?" she asks when I open it, looking me up and down over the top of her sunglasses, not even taking them off. "That's me," I say, "what's going on?" She flips a clipboard around like she's serving a warrant. There's the Harborview HOA logo at the top and bold letters that say, "Violation Notice." and right underneath there's a picture of my boat. Your watercraft no longer complies with our updated community aesthetic standards. She reads like she's done this 100 times. You have 72 hours to remove it from the property. Fines will accrue at $500 per day after the deadline. I think I actually laughed at first because it sounded that stupid. I told her, "Ma'am, that boat's been in that slip longer than your building has been standing. It's maintained. It's paid for." Nobody's ever said a word, but she just does that little tight smile people do when they've already decided you're wrong. Points toward the water like she owns the tide. "We've upgraded our guidelines," she says. "We're raising the profile of Harborview Landing. Older vessels that don't fit the visual standard must be removed. The board voted. It's nothing personal. It's just about protecting everyone's property values." I asked to see the guidelines, asked. "Where it says you can erase someone's history because the paint isn't shiny enough." She glances at her Apple Watch and says, "You're welcome to review the recreational watercraft appearance guidelines at the HOA office during business hours. The community appreciates your cooperation." Then she walks back to her SUV still parked across my driveway, typing on her phone as she pulls away. Like I'm already a problem, she checked off her list. Look, I tried to be reasonable. That's the part people skip over when they hear how this ends for the next couple days. I scrubbed every inch of that hull, touched up the scuffs with marine paint, replaced frayed ropes, cleared out junk on the dock, made that boat look as sharp as a 30-year-old seafarer can. Then I walked the marina and really looked around, and what I saw made my blood buzz. 2 slips over. There's a big cruiser with rust streaks running down like tears. Canvas-ripped mildew on the sides. No violation. A cabin boat further down with half the trim hanging off, go violation. A big fancy boat that belongs to some state senator, generator so loud it sounds like a tractor, stains all over the hull. And guess what? There's a little note in the records calling it a classic vessel, so it gets an exemption. My boat clean paid up, named after my dead wife. That's the eyesore. A few days after the notice, there's a special HOA meeting in the community center. Plastic chairs, stale coffee, name tags. Cheryl at the front with a tiny gavel, like she's chairing Congress behind her. On a projector screen is a blown-up picture of Emily's promise, taken from the least flattering angle they could find. "We have a serious aesthetic concern, impacting community values," she says, and it's my boat up there, while people in polos and boat shoes nod along. I stand up, hands a little shaky, and tell them, "That boat is the last piece of my wife I have. I keep the slip clean. I pay my fees. If there's a real safety issue, tell me, I'll fix it. But you don't get to call my grief a nuisance. A couple folks won't meet my eyes." Older couple looks at me like they want to speak up and don't, and Cheryl just hits that gavel. "We sympathize with your loss, Mr. Lawson. But we have to put the interests of the community over individual sentiment. Rules are rules." Then she moves on to the next agenda item, like she didn't just stomp on a gravestone. A few days later, a certified letter shows up from a downtown law firm with a name that sounds like inherited money. Cease and desist. All violations. Remove vessel or face legal action. Seeking up to $50,000 in damages and attorney fees. And I'm sitting at my kitchen table, staring at that number. $50,000 on my pension and Social Security. That's not a fine. That's a foreclosure notice, dressed up in legal font. For a minute, I seriously thought about giving up selling the boat for whatever I could get. Maybe even selling the house and moving inland, where nobody cares what your driveway looks like. But every time my brain went there, I heard Emily's voice, that little half laugh she had when she was mad. "You've never let anyone push you off your own porch, Mike. Don't start now just because they have a logo and letterhead." So instead of going down to the dock, I drove to the county courthouse, walked into that old record room that smells like dust and toner, and I asked the clerk for every document on Harborview Landing and Bay Ridge, Marina going back to when it was dirt. And I sat there under buzzing fluorescent lights, flipping through plats and deeds and easements until my eyes hurt. That's when I found it, a survey map from the late 80s, showing the Marina Basin, the parking lot, the channel out to open water, and one narrow 50-foot strip of land connecting the two with a parcel number printed right on it that matched the one on my tax bill. My parents' land, and clipped to that map was an easement agreement labeled Permissive Access Easement, Lawson to Bay Ridge, Marina Association, not permanent, not runs with the land, just permission that could be revoked with 30 days written notice. I read that line over and over, revocable by grantor, with 30 days notice, and I swear you could feel the whole power dynamic of that HOA meeting flip upside down in my head. Suddenly it wasn't just me and my old boat versus the board and their shiny rules. It was every one of those 200 boats. Depending on a sliver of ground my family had let them use for free, because that's what neighbors used to do. I took those documents to a property attorney a friend recommended. Rachel Kim's small office above a nail salon. No marble lobby, which made me trust her more. She spread the papers out, read in silence for a while, then looked up and said, "Mike, you know you're holding the only key out of that marina, right?" And she walked me through it, nice and slow, so even my grief-fogged brain could follow. My parents gave permission, not a perpetual right. The HOA had been acting like it was carved in stone, but legally I could withdraw it. File termination, give 30 days notice, and then if I wanted to put a fence across that strip and grow roses on it, that was my business. I asked her if she was sure, told her I didn't want to start some war. I couldn't afford to finish. She pointed at the revocation clause again and said, "They gambled on you, never checking they used your land to sell marina access for years. If anyone started a war, it wasn't you." We recorded the termination at the county. The clerk stamped it with a heavy thunk that felt like the universe saying, "Fine, let's do this." And Rachel mailed certified copies to the HOA, the Marina Association, and as many slip owners as we had records for 30 days. Clock running. And while that clock ticked, I went home and stood at the edge of that strip, where everyone had been towing their jet skis and hauling their coolers and backing trailers for decades, and for the first time I didn't see the Marina Road. I saw my driveway continuing all the way to the water. That's when the idea of the fence stopped being a maybe and turned into a blueprint in my head. 8-foot steel panels, heavy posts in concrete, sliding gate, with a motor solar power cameras, not some petty barricade, but a proper line in the sand that even an HOA board couldn't pretend not to see. I spent most of what was left of Emily's insurance on that fence. Some people will say that was stupid. I get it. But after everything they'd tried to take from me, putting my money into something solid that said, "This is mine," felt like the smartest move I'd made in a long time. I didn't build it alone. Guys like me see when someone's getting pushed around, and they show up. Tommy from the marina shop came with his old shovel. Bill from the fuel dock brought a beat-up cement mixer that still ran like a champ. John, the retired electrician, waddled in with a coil of wire and a grin. We spent a long weekend digging holes, dropping posts, mixing concrete, bolting panels together. My arms were jelly by the second day. Every clank of steel sounded like one more no to the way Cheryl thought the world worked. She found out about the fence halfway through, screeched to a stop at the top of the strip, stormed down in a tennis skirt, and what I swear were diamond earrings for a construction site, yelling, "You can't block community access. This belongs to everyone." And I handed her a copy of the recorded termination and said, "It belonged to everyone, when everyone showed respect. Now, it belongs to the person who pays the taxes on it." Again, she threatened. Building inspectors, safety complaints, all the tricks the inspector came out. Took one look, said, "He's to code. Maybe you should hire him for your next project." And I think that's when she realized I wasn't bluffing. The night before the 30 days were up, my phone lit up at a little after 2 in the morning. Motion alert on the driveway camera. I tapped it. Thinking Raccoon saw Cheryl's SUV and 3 guys in hoodies unloading sledgehammers, her pointing at the fence like a general, them swinging for all they were worth, sparks flying, paint chipping. But those posts were sitting in 3 feet of concrete. They weren't going anywhere. I called 911, told the dispatcher exactly what I was seeing, and that it was all on HD video. Deputies rolled up with lights flashing, caught them mid-swing. I watched on the feed while Cheryl tried to spin it like some kind of emergency safety inspection. The deputy played the footage back on his tablet, listened to her on camera, saying, "Hit it harder. I'll handle the paperwork," and then he said the one sentence I'd been waiting to hear. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal mischief and trespassing." Seeing her get cuffed in her expensive workout gear in the middle of my driveway at 2 in the morning. Yeah, that happened. A couple days later, her lawyers tried to get an emergency order from a judge to force me to open the lane. Cried about irreparable harm and community disaster. The judge watched the fence video, listened to Rachel explain the easement, then looked at their side and said, "Your client attempted to destroy the very structure she now wants. Removed the only thing irreparable here is her judgment. Motion denied. And with that, there was nothing left between me and that gate except time." On day 30, I made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table, pulled up the camera feed on my tablet, watched SUVs and trucks with trailers roll up to the gate. People hop out, jiggle the latch, squint at the big sign that said, "Private property. Easement revoked. No Marina access." I checked the clock, 8 a.m. Straight up hit the button on my phone, heard the motor hum, and the gate slide. All the way shut, that sound was quieter than a gavel, but it hit a lot harder. Within an hour, the road looked like a boat show parking lot. Kids in life jackets, coolers, fishing rods, folks pacing, yelling into phones. And right in the middle of it, eventually comes Cheryl Hare. Not done makeup, not perfect. For the first time, she grabs the fence and screams. My name, demands I open it for the good of the community. But I just step out on my porch and say, "You chose this. You could have talked like a neighbor. You chose threats and lawyers and sledgehammers. This is what consequences look like." The part that surprised me was what happened next. Because it wasn't me versus her anymore. It was the neighbors she'd been protecting turning on her. A guy in a polo yells, "You told us he couldn't do this." A woman points at her and says, "We paid 15 grand in access fees when we bought." "You never said the easement was revocable." Someone from the news crew who'd shown up asks if I have proof of that, and I hand him copies of the original easement and the Marina financials. Rachel dug up, showing millions collected for access to land. Nobody ever paid my family a dime for. Then I give him a thumb drive and tell him, "And here's what your HOA president was doing with some hired help at 2 in the morning last week." They play the video right there. Crowd watches Cheryl on screen, ordering guys to break my fence. then looks at her in real life, and the air changes. She starts hollering about me holding everyone hostage, about how I'm destroying property values, about how I'm heartless, and one of the deputies finally tells her to calm down, or she's going in again she doesn't. So they cuff her right there by the gate, and that slow, bitter clap you hear from the crowd isn't for me, it's for the moment the bully finally runs out of excuses. At the emergency homeowners meeting that night, without her in the room, folks asked me to stand up and explain. So I did, told them. I didn't wake up one day wanting to shut down their marina. Told them I tried to cooperate, tried to talk, and that I loved my wife, that the boat was my last piece of her, that I wasn't about to let somebody with a title erase her, because it didn't match her real estate brochure. And I laid out the easement language, the years of access fees collected on the back of my parents' kindness. The vandalism caught on camera, then I said, if you want a neighbor back there instead of an enemy, you picked the wrong person to push this far. But you picked the right person to sit down and sign something fair. They voted Cheryl out of the HOA board that night, almost unanimous, started an interim committee that actually had some regular working people on it. And within a week, Rachel was sitting at my kitchen table, while 3 members of that committee slid a draft agreement across it, real compensation for using the strip rules that protected small boat owners from being singled out, written protections for memorial vessels, grievance process no more. Because I said so. Fines. It wasn't perfect, but it was human, so I signed the new board. Signed, Rachel filed it. And a couple days later, I hit that button again and watched the gate slide open. This time, on my terms, Emily's promise. Still rocks in that slip under the old buzzing light. Still has her wind chime singing when the breeze comes around the corner just right. Some mornings, a kid from the condos will ask about the name, and I'll tell them about their science teacher, or their nurse, or their mom. Because half the time, they didn't know I had one. And it hits me that all of this, all the steel and paperwork and yelling, was really just about making sure someone like Emily wasn't treated like clutter in a place she helped build. So here's what I'll leave you with, because I know some of you are going to say, I went too far, locking down the whole marina. Some of you will say, I didn't go far enough, that I should have kept it closed forever, and honestly, I still go back and forth on that in my head when it's quiet. Was I standing up for myself and my wife, or was I punishing people who stayed silent too long, and how much silence makes you part of the problem? You know, so tell me what you think was, I right? To use the only leverage I had to force change, or should I have swallowed the loss and walked away? Whose side are you on in this? The grieving husband with the fence, the neighbors caught in the crossfire, or the HOA president who thought she was just doing her job? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your own HOA or neighborhood horror stories. I really do read them, yet like if you stuck with me this far, hit subscribe. If you want more stories about regular people pushing back when someone with a clipboard and a title forgets where the property line really is.